Hello everyone, I'm Keith Platfoot with Caviation, and today we're going to look at logging a carry forward totals entry in Smart Logbook. So a carry forward totals entry is useful when you've already logged some flights and some time in a previous logbook. Could be a paper logbook or it could be another logbook app. And you want to get those prior hours and totals into Smart Logbook to kind of be the starting point for your new logbook. So let's take a look at how we would do that. So we're starting out here on the flight list, and we're going to tap plus at the top as if we were logging a new flight. Now when the flight editor pops up, we're going to tap the title that says new flight, and then choose in the menu carry forward totals. And you'll see the editor has changed slightly. Some of the fields that are not relevant, such as route, have disappeared. But we can still add our durations here that we logged previously. So let's tap the Add Duration button here and add those fields that we need. So let's imagine we had some previous PIC time, maybe some dual received, a little bit of night, and we had some cross-country hours. So we add those fields, and now we can go ahead and enter some of those previous totals. Okay, so now we've logged our previous flight hours, and if we move down in the editor here, we can also log our previous takeoff and landings totals. All right, and that's all we need there. So let's tap Done and save this carry forward totals entry, which you can now see shows up in our flight list. And you can also see if we go to the Totals tab here at the bottom, we also now have those totals showing up as our starting values for our logbook here, even though, as you can see at the bottom, we haven't yet logged any actual flights. Now, if we were to go and print the logbook now, you'll also see that these values are going to show up in the carry forward or amount forwarded lines in our logbook on the first page. So, for example, here's the Jeppesen basic format. And you can see our takeoff and landings showing up there on the first page. And you can also see some of the individual hours here. For example, our cross-country hours, our PIC, our dual received, they're all showing up as those initial amount forwarded amounts. And anything we log going forward will be added to these initial starting values. Now, you'll see here, though, that there's one thing missing. And on the first page of the Jeppesen format here, we have columns for aircraft category and class. And usually we would have things like, single engine land, multi-engine land, and so forth, and we would see the corresponding totals, but we don't have that right now. Now the reason this is because when we logged our carry forward totals, we didn't provide any context. We didn't say this is what type of aircraft these hours were logged in. So let's fix that now. Let's go back into that first carry forward totals. And you'll see at the top here we have an aircraft model field. So let's tap that. And what this lets us do is say that these hours were logged in a particular aircraft type. Let's say in this case, these were all of our previous single engine hours, which were all done in a Cessna 172. So we can open up category class, set that as single engine land, tap done again. And if we were to print this now, we would see that we would have that correct column in the printout. Now while we're at it, now I should mention that if you do have multiple aircraft types, of course, you can create a carry forward totals entry for each aircraft type. So let's say that we also had some multi-engine time previously. So we're going to go back in the flight editor. We're going to add a second carry forward totals entry. This time, we're going to assign it to not a specific aircraft, but sort of a composite aircraft. Let's imagine that we had our multi-engine hours spread across a few different actual types. So what we can do in this case is just create kind of a synthetic aircraft model here, and we're going to call it AML to represent all of our multi-engine land time. So as before, we're going to set the category and class. It's also not a bad idea to set multi-pilot. This is actually useful if you're printing If you're going to eventually print with the EASA format, they're going to have a column specifically for multi-pilot, so you want to check that if it's relevant. And let's assign that to this carry forward totals entry. Next, we're going to click Add Duration here and go ahead and add the fields we need. And let's say for a multi-engine time, we were actually a first officer co-pilot on these flights. We've still got some night time to carry in, so let's add these fields here and go ahead and log the actual values here. We're going to say that all of this previous time was second in command, and we had a little bit of additional night time in here. And next, let's go ahead and get our takeoff and landings logged. Okay, so now we have a second entry here with all of our multi-engine previous time. So we tap Done, and we now have that entry also showing up in our flight list. Check the total screen here, and you can see that we now have both our single engine and our previous multi-engine time added together here and showing up on the total screen. And if we go back to our Jeppesen logbook, we can see that we now have those aircraft category columns correctly populated, one for single engine and one for multi-engine. Now, if you're just printing the Jeppesen formats, or you're in Europe and you're using the EASA format, you're basically done at this point. This is really all you need to do to log your previous time. You can add as many carried forward entries as you need for different aircraft model types, or you could even use the date field to kind of break it down by year if that's how your previous time is already logged. There's a couple of formats though. There's a couple of print formats that require us to do a little bit of additional work here. For example, the Transport Canada or the India DGCA formats. And the reason they take a little more work is because some of those columns, the columns in those printed logbooks are grouped a little bit differently. Let's take a look at one of those. So if we take a look here at the Transport Canada PDF, you can see that even though we have our carry forward totals entry, very little of this logbook is actually filled out. Our grand total is 0, and all of these columns 1 through 10 are completely empty. Now the reason is because you can see here at the top that our totals are grouped not just by single engine and multi-engine, which Smart Logbook already knows about, but they're also grouped by day versus night. And even though we did log some previous night time, we never told Smart Logbook how that day and night time kind of broke down, right? How much of that was PIC, how much of that was SIC, how much of that was dual received. But these logbook formats require us to break that down and be very specific about where that time belongs. Now, normally when you're logging new flights, Smart Logbook handles this automatically. Basically, if you log PIC time, for example, in a single engine aircraft and you don't have any night logged in that flight, well, Smart Logbook can figure out that that time that you log belongs in the single engine day PIC column. But for carry forward total entries, we're going to have to tell the app specifically how that previous time should be classified. And the way that we can do this is with what's called a combined duration field. And this lets us represent time that fits into multiple categories. For example, we can log time that is both PIC and day, hours. So let's do that now. So what we're going to do is go back to that first carry forward totals entry. That was our single engine land time. And we're going to tap Add Duration here. And we're going to scroll to the bottom and tap the Add Combination field button down here. And this is going to let us choose two fields that we want to kind of represent with a single field. And so let's go ahead and add the combinations we need. And let's say that we had some dual received both at day and night. So we're going to choose dual received day, create a field there, and you can see at the bottom we now have a dual received day field. Let's add another one for dual received at night, and we now have that field. And lastly, let's choose our pilot and command time during the day and make a field for that. Okay, and let's go ahead and add all three of those to this carry forward totals entry. So now you can see we have the new fields here at the bottom, and we can take that 100 hours, or we can take the 50 hours rather, of dual receive time and specify that 45 of those hours were during the day and 5 of those hours were that nighttime. Likewise, we can go down here and say that all of our pilot and command time was during the day. And let's tap done and do the same now for our second in command time. That was our multi-engine time. We're going to go through the same drill here. We're going to tap add duration. And we now need to add a few additional fields for the second in command time. So in this case, it's going to be second in command day. We're going to create one field there. There it is. And create a second one for second in command nighttime. And we now have that. And let's add both of those to this carry forward totals entry. Okay, so now let's divide up our second in command time between day, that was 90 hours, and those 10 hours at night. Okay, so we save that. Now we've fully specified exactly where all of our previous time should live. You know, does it go in the day column or the night column? And so when we print this logbook again, you can now see that in fact we do have all of those columns 1 through 10 correctly populated. We have our single engine and multi-engine time, and it's all there where it belongs. We also see this reflected in the grand total on the first page. Now, unfortunately, we still have one issue, and you can see this here in the cross-country columns. Now, the cross-country columns are also going to be grouped by both day versus night and dual versus PIC. But you can see here that even though our cross-country time was only supposed to be represented in the day dual time, I'm sorry, no, it actually should be in the day PIC time, we also have it showing up as dual time. And we also have it showing up as night dual time. Now, neither one of these is correct. If you look back at our entry here, those cross-country hours should only be PIC day. So how do we fix this? Well, we saw that combination duration fields are useful for specifying 2 different fields that time applies to. But in this case, we actually need to say that it applies to 3 different fields. That would be cross-country, day, and PIC, for example. And there's not a way to do this with combination fields in Smart Logbook. But there isn't a workaround. And what we can do is we can actually make another carry forward totals entry just for our cross-country time. And the reason this works is because when printing the Transport Canada format, Smart Logbook will look at your cross-country time and basically apply that to the entire flight or carry forward totals entry. And so what we can do is make a third carry forward totals entry here. And this one's going to be just for cross-country time. So let's add the fields that we need. Let's add the cross-country, and all of that cross-country time in this case was PIC daytime. So the values we're going to log here are, we're going to take that 25 hours of cross-country time, we're going to put it here, and then we're going to further specify that those 25 hours of cross-country time were PIC day time. And you'll notice we're going to leave the totals duration here blank. Now we're going to leave it blank because if we put 25 here, this would actually double count those cross-country hours, and we don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and go down here to the bottom though and make one more change, and that is that carry forward totals entries also have the remarks column, just like a flight entry. And this lets us add, notes about what does this cross country or what does this carry forward totals time represent, which in this case, we're going to mark that this is our cross country time. Okay, and you can see that that actually shows up in the flight list once we add that entry. Now, you'll remember that we also had already previously logged that cross-country time in our single-engine land entry here. So we're going to need to actually take that out of this entry. So let's remove that from here. Again, this is to make sure we don't double count that cross-country time. Now it's going to be represented only by that third carry forward totals entry that we added. So we tap done, and let's double check totals here, and we can see that we only have 25 hours of cross-country time total. And when we go to print our Transport Canada logbook again, we can now see that our 25 hours are correctly showing up only in the day PIC column. And so at this point, we have all of our previous time correctly allocated and printing correctly, and we can go ahead and start logging new flights in Smart Logbook. So I hope this has been a useful example of how to add your previous hours from previous logbooks into Smart Logbook so that you can start logging new flights and have your totals and your printouts fully reflect your flying career. Thanks.